flashback. It's 1919, really bad times for the world. Around 20 million people are dead from the First World War. The economy is bad, cities are barely standing. It's looking pretty much hopeless. But life must go on. The Allies had won the First World War. That's America, Britain, France, Russia, and Italy. Their leaders met up in Paris. Their job? Draw up a peace deal. Make sure there are no more wars in the future. Simple, right? Well, those leaders did give it a shot, especially this man, Woodrow Wilson. He was the 28th President of the United States. He proposed a radical idea in Paris. What if all countries came together to create a single global organization? Somewhere to talk, somewhere to discuss policies, and most importantly, somewhere to complain. I know what you're thinking. Isn't that what the United Nations does? Well, yes, but this story is about the organization that preceded the UN. This story is about the League of Nations. Let's catch up with our friends in Paris. Most of them agreed to Woodrow Wilson's idea. No war seemed like a good plan. So they signed what is called the Treaty of Versailles and set up the League. President Wilson was a happy man. He returned home eager to get cracking with his new toy. Just one problem though. The US Congress wouldn't let him. They refused to approve the Treaty of Versailles. Talk about an M. Night Shyamalan twist. The League went ahead without the United States. You have to feel for President Wilson though. It's like that friend who plans the trip to Goa, but his own family says, don't go. Back to the 20th century again, the League's first session was in November 1920 in Geneva. 41 members attended it. India had a membership, but India was still a British colony then. Same with most of Africa. And it was a very important contradiction in the League. War was not okay, but colonialism was. The League functioned with 4 organs: an assembly of member countries, a council of permanent members, an international tribunal, and a permanent secretariat. A lot like the United Nations, actually, just the other way around. The 1920s went by without much fuss. Most countries were trying to figure out what the League was, how they could use it. In this time, one achievement stands out: the Geneva Protocol. The League banned the use of chemical and biological weapons in the year 1928, and it was a big deal then. But the honeymoon period did not last. Soon, a new crop of leaders emerged, more authoritarian, more ruthless, and more belligerent. The worst among them? This man. Adolf Hitler. The League's downfall began in 1933. 2 members decided to quit the group. First was Japan. Japan invaded northeast China, which was then called Manchuria.
52 nations assembled at Geneva have joined in condemning the horrors perpetrated by Japan in their war against China. In the bombing of open towns by Japanese aircraft, thousands of innocent civilians have lost their lives. Hear the speech of Dr. Wellington Koo, Chinese delegate to the League of Nations.
Will nullify all the past work and present effort to organize peace and security, and throw the entire world into the pandemonium of a general conflagration with all its horrors of killing and destruction.
When the League objected, Japan left. That was strike 1. Strike 2 was Hitler. He had enough of pacificism. He wanted to rearm Germany. When the League objected, Hitler pulled out. Strike 2. Strike 3 came much later in the form of Italy. Its ruler was Hitler's dictator in arms, Benito Mussolini. When Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, the League objected.
But in Geneva, the League of Nations Assembly decided by an overwhelming majority in favor of sanctions against Italy. Despite forceful appeals by Baron Aloisi, 51 nations agreed to bring economic and financial pressure to bear on Italy as aggressor in the war in Africa.
The League has 2 main tasks. First, to avert war by the just and peaceful settlement of all disputes.
You can guess what happened next. Italy quit. The year was 1937. Within 2 years, the Second World War broke out, and that was curtains for the League. It had one job to do, and it failed. One by one, its members were invaded by Hitler's army.
These are the authentic pictures of the latest act of criminal aggression by the German nation, invasion of Denmark. 10 months ago, Germany offered its northern neighbor a pact of non-aggression to last 10 years. Living up to its well-known tradition of broken faith, the Reich sent troops by land and sea to complete the conquest of this unoffending neutral. In one day, this nation lost its identity in Europe and became part of Germany. But Denmark decided that surrender was better than slaughter.
Denmark gone, Luxembourg gone, France, Belgium, Norway gone, so was the Netherlands.
German forces were already on their way to complete yet one more act of aggression against weak and innocent neutrals. It was obviously impossible that an elaborate invasion carried out by land and sea forces at several points could have been planned and executed in a few hours.
The League was like an old man confined to his bed. He had the wisdom to help. What he did not have was the power. We can really skim over the next 6 years until 1945. That's because the League did absolutely nothing in this time, virtually zero meetings. It was just dying day by day. Cut to September 1945, the war ended. It was a 1919 déjà vu. The victorious Allies met again. They had two options: A, revive the old man, aka the League of Nations, or B, pull the plug. The Allies chose option B. They decided the League's time was up. Instead, they opted to create a new organization called the United Nations.
The story of the League of Nations comes to an end when at the Palace of Geneva, the delegates of many lands meet for the last time. Assembled in the Great Hall, the members carry out the final business of the League, which now gives place to a more powerful organization. Among the delegates is Lord Cecil, a champion of peace since 1920. His words at this last session of Geneva will be echoed by the whole world. The League is dead. Long live the United Nations.
Looking back, why did the League fail? I wish I could give you a single answer, but the fact is, it's more complicated. For starters, the United States never joined it. Remember the Goa trip example I gave you? If the guy who planned the trip never made it, what will the rest do? They have no itinerary, no sense of where to go and what to do. Secondly, some people in the group had their own plans, perhaps a different destination or a different mode of travel. When those plans did not fit in, they just left on a different trip. In this case, Germany, Japan, and Italy. So that's why the League failed. It could not create a consensus or force obedience. Sounds a lot like the UN, doesn't it? And you're not wrong. On paper, the United Nations has outlived the League of Nations. Also, there hasn't been a third world war. Quite low standards, I know. But the world is still the Wild West. Bigger powers still invade smaller states, like the US in Iraq or Russia and Ukraine. Rogue neighbors still sabotage peaceful ones. The United Nations has not been able to solve those problems. But a good start would be reforms. More democracy never hurt anyone. If the idea is collective security, then don't limit powers in the hands of 5 permanent members. Share powers. Share responsibility.